can see now. I can see. This is annoying.
Cool. Right. So this session is going to be Michael and I comparing notes and exploring GIMP, or its GNU image manipulation program alongside you guys. But just to get started, I thought it'd be good if we had went around and you can tell us why you're interested in this software, so that we can be sure to touch on anything that you're particularly interested in. If you don't have anything, if you're just exploring, that's totally fine. So Tara, you want to tell us what you're most interested in?
Yeah, I don't think that I'm particularly interested in GIMP, but just like graphic design in general. And it's always awesome to learn a new piece of software. I do have Illustrator and have been more experienced with that, but I think I'm interested in like the broader principles of image manipulation and not the specifics of like the program, but like general techniques that can be used across multiple programs.
Cool. Jay, do you want to share what you're thinking? Jay, are you there?
Nope.
We might have lost Jay. So Rich.
Okay. For me, I'm just trying to keep up with you guys. You're all over the place. You're going in so many different directions, and it's a challenge to keep up with you. I know that, but I'm liking it a lot. I'm sure it'll keep me from going senile.
Yeah.
That's a worthwhile thing to do.
Good goal, exactly.
Sit over here when you talk.
Oh, sit here.
Yeah. Great. Well, Jay can pipe in when he's available. But otherwise, let's get into it. I'd say for my own, and I'll turn it over to you in a second, Michael.
Sure.
So my own experience with GIMP is just that when you talk about the experience with like Illustrator, it's a very different thing. It's more equivalent to Photoshop because it's based on dealing with a raster image or a set of pixels rather than a set of coordinates and lines. And I got into Photoshop when I was like young, like a little kid, and I was making like not fake dollar bills to sell, but like putting my head on them or like editing historic pictures and so on. And I think GIMP has that same level of you can just play with it and have a lot of fun and explore it without needing a real thing to do. The most recent thing that I've done in GIMP is I have an old home, and I've been thinking about how do I fix it up? How do I, there's like the staircase that was a retrofit onto it. And I was like, what does it look like without the staircase? How can I make it more historic? And I was able to take the picture and then use the clone tool to hide the additions that were added later. I was able to change the colors of the window sashes and put those all in layers so I can add and remove those additions and start experimenting with what does my home look like. So I think it's everything from photo manipulation into design for streetscapes or homes are what might be exciting for GIMP. So Michael, do you want to say where you're coming at it from?
Sure. So I've been a Photoshop user for about 20 years. Started using it in art school to do all the art school stuff that we would do with it. Just anything you needed, if it was layout or if it was mock-ups or, some kind of digital process, maybe combined with a traditional process. Printmaking was a big one. And then I started teaching it. I teach high school, so I've been teaching Photoshop as a class. And so recently have just been interested in seeing what else is out there. There's other programs, obviously, that are available. GIMP is free, so that's a big bonus point there. And I think, Tara, like you said, like seeing what programs can do, like what the nature of graphic programs are, because I'm so Photoshop sort of geared or so Photoshop centric. So I've been playing with GIMP for just a couple hours, and I think my experience went from frustration that it doesn't do the same exact thing that Photoshop does to kind of relaxing a little bit and just seeing what it can do and where it's got a nice flow to it. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you, and I'm going to walk you through I'm not seeing.
We're seeing your window there, Michael.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. So are you seeing the GIMP? The GIMP.
Yeah, we are. Can I mention one thing that I found initially kind of confusing as a beginner on it?
Sure.
Is by default, it will be in multi-window mode, which can be really good once you're comfortable with what the windows are. And in that, you have like a drawing window, and then you have your toolbar in a separate window, and you have other things. But it also means that you can stack things on top of each other and lose them. And so it's easier to go to single window mode. And it looks like you're in single window mode already, Michael. But yeah, if you go up to Windows, I think that there's just a checkbox. It's like single window or multi-window. And so just to be aware, if it doesn't look like what we're seeing here, take it to a single window. I think it's easier to start with.
Yeah, so there it is, right? Split into multiple. Yeah.
And then it's all over the place. And it's really, multi-window is awesome if you have two screens and you can put all your toolbars on one screen and you just have one whole screen for drawing or other things like that. But to start, let's just do it in single window.
Yeah, and I think I eschew all the workspace setup stuff you're supposed to do when you start using a program. I just kind of jump in and I figure it out later. But workspace organization is I think, really key once you get, further along with it. So I'm just going to go back through some of the things that I did to kind of get myself oriented with GIMP. So I just grabbed an image that I thought would work as a good baseline. So it's a photo of Frida Kahlo taken by Imogen Cunningham, legendary American photographer. So, it just started off with some really basic stuff. So like photo manipulation, and then I started getting into working with layers, and I got into a little bit with filters. So I'll just, go through some of the steps I did. And then if anyone wants to jump in, feel free. And JR, if you can check the chat, because I don't have that window open right now. So, just chime in if anyone, wants to interject. So one thing I found really helpful is that all the menu headers are actually right here. So, which I found really nice. So everything that is also at the top of the screen is right here. So, if you're looking for, any kind of photo adjustment stuff, it has that. I might not be super articulate about where things are because I'm still really learning the layout. So, I can do some photo adjustment with,
Sorry.
The doorbell.
Yep, sorry.
And, one of the things that I'm still kind of getting used to as, not knowing the sort of the look of GIMP is kind of just where the stuff is that I'm used to looking for and kind of navigating that. GIMP has a lot of options, a lot more than I think I was ready for, which I think.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Specifically about because a lot of those look really similar to Photoshop, and I'm wondering if the similar keyboard hotkeys are the same. So like for sliding the certain things, if you hold Alt, it slides more smoothly and whatnot. Do you find some of those are the same?
Yeah, there's some. I've found some overlap, but not perfectly symmetrical. Like I went to duplicate a layer, Command J in Photoshop, and it did something that I, completely wasn't ready for.
Okay.
So there are some crossover. There's some crossover for sure. Like, one of the interesting ones is like if you select all, so that's Command A, and then if you deselect, it's actually Command Shift A, which is deselect in Illustrator, not in Photoshop. So there's like, there's like some slight overlap, but not everything is exactly the same.
Okay.
So speaking of selection, so the selection, there are selection tools up here, but what you can also do is you can go select, and then you can find your select tools. It'll show you, where is that? Wait, oh, it's here, sorry. So it'll actually show you all your selection tools in one place, which is kind of nice.
Mhm.
So you can see what specifically you can use as selection tools, and what from your toolbar over here is not. So
Michael, have you played around with the masking, like using drawing for masking?
yeah, a little bit. I did get into some masking, yeah.
Yeah, so that's I found that was really powerful. Do you mind if we just like mention what that is, or?
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. Do you mind just doing like a random selection of any shape?
Yeah. So I can. So I'll select, and you can kind of direct me here.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna select her shirt, and using the lasso tool. And one of the cool things about the lasso tool that I really like in GIMP is that you can free lasso, or you can you can polygonal lasso all in the same tool. You just release the mouse button and click to create these anchor points. And then you can go back to free drawing by just holding the mouse button down. So that was like a nice discovery that I made.
Yeah. And is it doing the magnet thing as well?
No,
isn't it?
I don't have the magnetic. I'm not using that tool.
Okay.
I'm just using the lasso tool. And then you can see that it actually shows you those anchor points that you made. So if you're using the polygonal lasso tool, you can actually adjust your selection just like you would with the pen tool in Illustrator. I don't know if you can add points or not. It doesn't look like
you can add bubbles. So you notice like when you have a little plus sign on it.
Yeah.
So if you hold down like Shift or Control, you can add or subtract, and then draw and remove and add. I'm calling them bubbles, but portions of.
Oh, right. Yeah, you can modify your selection. If you hold Command is the minus the subtract selection.
They're Bezier control points.
Yeah, I don't know how to add the control points. I think that's what you were saying, Michael.
Right. I don't know if you can add control points.
So I found it really useful that you could now, if you go to the bottom left corner, Michael, the one that's not the menu, and there's that little tiny square down there.
Here.
Yep. Click that.
Okay, so that brings you right into your mask mode. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And this, maybe it's because when I kind of discovered that you could do this, but also that you could kind of shade or feather the edges. So your mask can go from being like just a really direct line to being something that has a gradient. And then it was really useful when you're trying to, and then you could just hit the mask on and off to fluctuate and figure out what you have.
Right. And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I found really useful is like, once you make your selection, not to edit it on the layer that you have, but to create a new layer with that selection. And then all your tools are just applying to that layer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so these are, again, like, similarities to other graphic programs, Photoshop being the big one. And it's just finding where those things are in GIMP. And so you can you're talking about feathering the selection by doing it manually.
Yeah, so you could just use the paint tool, any paint tool, and then the brush properties will apply to that selection. So if you have like a soft edge, you can have a soft edge on your selection. Yeah.
I can soften that edge like that. And if I toggle back and forth between the black and the white, I can then add.
Oh, did we lose you, Michael? Huh.
Feather the selection here. And then now that I've got the selection, there's a couple of things that you can, and you can see it here over here on the, I I don't know what this window is called, but it's basically like your selection sort of preview window, I guess. You can do a couple things here. You can save the selection by making it a channel, and then you can come back to it later. So if I end up deselecting, and then I want that selection back again, I can go into my channels menu, and I can right click, and then I can channel to selection, and that selection comes back. And then that way, I've always got that selection saved as a channel, and I can return to it later. One of the things I did find a little bit frustrating about GIMP is that if I select something else while that selection is active, it's going to make the first selection go away. And I did find that if you know a way around that, I was unable to find a way to have two independent selections simultaneously. So that was not something that I was able to get to work. So what I ended up doing was just saving multiple selections as multiple channels, and that way I can come back to those selections later if I want to.
You know, Michael, I was just looking, and under the select, there's something called the selection editor.
Okay.
And it looks like that has some tools on it for adding paths and modifying those paths. And it has like save selection to a channel.
So that's, okay, yeah. So I think that's this. That's the selection editor up on the right, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it is the same thing. You're right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and mine just was toggled off.
Okay, yeah. So like it lets you do things like you can select all from here, which I don't, and you can dismiss, which I guess those are just sort of like shortcuts. I don't really know why you would want to do that, but and then you can invert, you can save to channel, which I just did. You can selection to path, which I didn't really play around with, and then you can paint along the selection outline, shift to stroke the selection with last used values. So, you know, and now I'm getting into some territory that I don't really understand. So.
Yeah, so you had a really big brush, so it'll probably just move that brush along that path and would basically fill it in.
Okay.
That's how I assume it. It would just paint along that line.
Got it. So yeah, so then with those selections, what I ended up doing was I ended up deciding to try to create a mask for those selected areas. So after saving them in my channels, I then activated them on the pixel layer here, and then I copied, and then I pasted, and then it gives you this floating selection, which means it's not actually placed yet. And then at the bottom of the screen, it prompts you to do certain things with it. So you can either dismiss it, you can anchor it to the layer below it, or you can create a new layer. So I created a new layer, and then I want to activate the other selection, and gonna copy and paste and create a new layer. And now I've got those two layers. You can't see them because they're the same information as what's on the pixel layer, but they're there. And they actually give you this little yellow.
Yeah. You can turn off the base layer and then we'll see them.
Yeah, true. There you go. Right. And then I'm going to merge these layers together by right-clicking the top one, and I'm going to merge down. So now I have them on one layer. And, you know, you can do a number of different things with them. You can apply a filter to them, which is pretty fun to do. The filters are pretty fun. There's lots of stuff in the filters menu. So, you know, if I wanted to blur out that pattern on her shirt, perhaps, I can do that, and it's affecting that one layer. Or, you know, there's some, go ahead.
Yeah. Did you try that? Have you done the split view, Michael?
I didn't do split view. No, where's that?
Yeah, so go to blur or one of those filters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
And so now, yeah, set the blur and then split view. And now
Oh, okay.
you can click on that purple line and drag it across and move it.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah, so you can like kind of like go back and forth and like see what your filter looks like applied or not applied.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did like the fact that it's live preview across the entire screen, which Photoshop doesn't do. It just gives you a little tiny sample, and which sometimes makes it really hard to see what your preview is going to be. And here it gives you the full and that's cool too. So you can actually move this split view, because this does me no good, but this is very helpful. Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what I ended up doing was I ended up making a mask. Well, before we started, I was playing around, and I ended up making a mask layer in order to have a non-destructive way to alter the image. So, which I suppose this is a non-destructive way as well, because I have a separate layer. But I just, for fun, I wanted to see if I can make a mask layer. So in order to do that, I duplicated the original pixel layer. And then what I did was I did something to the duplicate layer. So I'll just stick with blur again, since I was playing with that before. So I'll just blur out the entire image. Let me turn this off. Blur out the entire image. And then what I did was go to my new layer, and I want to alpha to selection, which will select everything that's in that layer. And then,
and it's worth saying, so for people that aren't familiar with alpha is the clear color.
Okay.
So if you're thinking of mixing, colors, alpha just means transparent, and it can be different amounts of transparent. Is that correct, Michael?
I have no idea. So
yeah, I think that's what the alpha channel is.
Okay. Alpha being, so like, it's like the 0, it's like the starting point. It's
yeah,
like
well, so alpha is the amount of transparency. How much can you see through that layer or color?
Ah, okay. Okay. I didn't know what that term meant. I was just purely looking for a way to load that selection.
Legacy term.
So then I'm going to add a layer mask to the copy of that pixel layer. And then what I can now do is, because I have my selection on that layer, if I go into the mask, I now fill with black, and it will now fill on the mask only. So I'm masking off, creating a mask over the blurred out background, or the blurred out layer that I just did before.
So, but that's a little different than an adjustment layer, right? Is there a way to do an adjustment layer?
Can you explain what an adjustment layer? So what's funny about this is I've been using GIMP for years, and this is like just so different than the way I use it. And I don't know what an adjustment layer is.
So an adjustment layer is essentially a filter.
Okay.
But it's less destructive than this. So like, say you wanted to do several layers of different edits.
Right.
With this method that you just showed us, you'd have to, build one on top of the other. And it does make it hard to go backwards and change that lower layer and like change the blur effect or whatever. So the adjustment layer is really like on top, and you can go back and change every bit of it regardless of what other adjustments are there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I didn't get into that. I didn't really get that far down the GIMP hole with whether there's adjustments. I didn't see anything like the way Photoshop has them like right out in front for you, and they're like very, very much part of the program. They weren't in the past, and then over time they've become so much more integral. And I didn't really find they weren't right out there for me in GIMP. So I did not get that far down. And maybe JR can point us in that direction as well.
No, I didn't know what adjustment layers were. So,
Okay.
typically, and it's worked well enough for me, is I've just used lots of layers. And
Right.
then what I've done is you can link layers, and you can put them in a tree. So you can group them, and then you can turn them on and off visually with an eyeball. So I'll link a whole bunch of them, and then I'll say like, turn off that entire group or turn on that entire group. And it can be clumsy at times, but it's worked well enough for my purposes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, my guess would be that it would be in this filter menu somewhere, but it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that specifically correlates to the adjustment layers that you're talking about. There's got to be a search feature in here, no?
I don't know. I haven't.
Okay.
I've just always explored.
YouTube is usually my search feature.
Yeah. So I think that would be a good YouTube question, is to see if GIMP has some comparable adjustment layers like you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I got too much farther than that, to be honest.
Yeah, so what you kind of are on the very practical, like somebody sophisticated in this program level. What I was thinking about is just like the clone tool, for turning people into like cyclopses, or healing an area of a picture. I also think with like the image that you had where you'd selected the outfit, that one would be good for colorization.
Sure.
And at the very beginning, you showed there's the histogram adjustment system that they have there, and then there's like you went through you went through the color balancing menu and the histogram balancing menu, and I think both of those are interesting to know how to interpret. I don't know. It sounds like Tara, you're pretty familiar with this stuff. So is that like old hat for you, or is that interesting?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's stuff that I know how to use really well in Photoshop. I don't know if I'm sure it probably works pretty similarly in GIMP. Would maybe just have to practice with like I just use the keyboard so much that I definitely, when I'm using these programs, I would definitely hit the wrong keys and everything would go awry.
So why don't we go to curves?
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like you've got some control over your keyboard shortcuts. This is in the preferences, or in the GIMP system menu. So it looks like you can set up a lot of these. Yeah. So there's quite a bit here. There's a lot that you can customize, which is cool that you can do that. You can set.
I think that's the benefit of the open source software, that they're aware that people want to customize.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and that's a really nice thing, is that you can tweak it to your own needs. So, I mean, this menu that JR was talking about, like some of these photo adjustments, I don't know if there's a way to like apply these as a separate layer.
Well, so it will apply just to that layer, I think, by default. Right. So if you make a layer for just her jacket, for example, right? Well, you already have that. You're kind of on that. Although I think you've selected the mask. So I think, I don't know.
So I'm back to that original layer of just the jacket. Yep. Yeah.
So I think now if you go up into the colors, right? Check. I think if you go to colors in that menu. Is Michael freezing for other people or just me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's in black and white, but there should be a way to play with, so I can colorize. Yeah. So for example, but see what Tara's talking about is now that is embedded into the layer.
Like you have to have pixels on the layer to adjust it, versus in Photoshop, the adjustment layer, there's no pixels involved whatsoever on the
Gotcha.
layer.
Yeah. There's no. You're basically scripting on top of the layers and preview the result of that script, and then you modify the script, so you're always working off the original.
Yeah. What I would have to do here is I would have to duplicate this layer and then apply what I wanted to do to it. Oops. Well, we can use posterize too. So I can posterize that layer and I still have the original one underneath.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I've done it.
Okay,
I don't know if that's the best way, but that's how I've done it. Yeah.
And then I should be able to, if I can and then I can create a group. I'm assuming I can create a group of these two layers.
Yeah, so just beside the eyeball, if you hover there, there'll be a little link button. Okay. Yeah, and then you should also be able to just click on that whole layer and then drag it underneath. You may have to click that little cross the top that shows like things moving.
Cross the top, like that?
Yeah, it might be that. I think so. If you pull it in, like you pull it backwards to the right, you can't. It doesn't make it a subgroup. Yeah, that might have been it. Yeah, down and then there you go. Try it. No. All right. I can do it, and I've done it. I might have to just do it myself in order to. I don't know quite how it happens, but it happened.
Yeah. Well, there is
a new group. Maybe that's it. Yeah, that sounds.
Oh, I see. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. There it is. Got it. Okay, so then I've created a new group. So that was what I did there was just right-click the layer, and then I made a new layer group, and then I dragged those layers in. So, and I can turn off. Oops, I've got my layers in the wrong order. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So it's for a Photoshop user, it's definitely a bit of a hard transition, I think. But it's certainly a capable program. And yeah, there's it's having that open source and free, alternative is definitely something that, is consumer friendly and beneficial. So.
Yeah. So I'll show, why don't I pull up a picture and then I'll do a screen share. Because there's a couple of just the tools that I find is fun. Is that cool, Mike? Or are you sort of at a point where I can do that? Yeah.
Yeah. I just displayed the max of my GIMP abilities just now. So I threw everything I had at you.
That's good. Oh, I guess I have to just share my whole screen. Entire screen. Share. All right. So we've got GIMP. I'm just going to go and grab. Do we have a portrait of a famous person that we want to do? The mayor. All right. So we're gonna.
You've been thinking about him all day, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Save as in downloads. Okay. So now we're going to open up. All right. It's probably not the highest resolution because I just grabbed it from the web. But I find it fun to be able to go in. I don't know what this little menu here is. And I can play with things like the tool for cloning. Sort of show tools, toolbox. Do I want a new toolbox?
Perspective clone. So it's, I think you just
there it is.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, clone normal. And so say I want to add an eye to him.
Okay.
Turn it into.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a size. So I'm going to grab that, and I just hit the control key that sets that point. And then I should be able to draw, and it will draw, you know, an eyeball on them.
Right.
Now that actually doesn't match the color of the skin. So I should really have done it on a new layer, and then I could blend. And so like the other tools are like blur. So here's like a smudge tool. And so I can smudge that edge. Now this is like, it illustrates how it works, right? If I want to blur his hair in. And then you can adjust all of the pieces on smudging. And then there's different types. Like there's a blur where it's just like water. There's also dodge and burn where you are like in an old darkroom. You can lighten an area. So if I wanted to, you know, target that and lighten it. The other thing is like, I find it very, so clone is a great tool when you're trying to hide things. Heal, I've not played a lot with. It should, like if it's supposed to be smart about how it changes the image and heals problems, but I'm not familiar enough with it just to know it's there, and we should probably, you know, figure it out at one point.
It's going to pull pixel information from the neighborhood, basically from the area around it. So sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes it's really not. It's like specific to each area.
So if I just drew a pencil line right there, and I went to heal, and you know, select all, and I'm going to see it has a little X on the heel. You see that? Like it says like a don't. Oh, yeah. There's like a don't cross.
Well, the pencil may be a different. Like, are you actually?
Yeah, I don't. We'll have to look up how to use heal, because I've seen it done, but I'm clearly doing it wrong.
Cam or something.
Yeah.
That.
So the other thing is like the scissors I found useful. So say if you wanted to like whiten his teeth, this you could just approximate where you're going, and it's going to find the edges. And then you bring it to the end, right? So it closes when you come to the end. And just like the other node thing, you can play with the node and just add to spots. So I'll do that, and then I'll come in here and be like, yep, right there. No, we want to be here. That's not right. We want to be here, right? And then I can go into the mask. Oh, so I have to first, before I mask, to commit this, I select inside of it. Now it's a selection. And then I can mask. And what I'll do is I'll just apply a blur to this whole mask, right? So blur that. And so now that edge is easier to deal with. And when I want to adjust something, now I can go into the colors, and there's curves and levels. So curve being there's these. These are basically, these are breakouts that simplify these, is one way to think of it. But I'm just going to go into curves first. And so this is a chart showing the images. I think it's the image, not the selection. Could just be the selection. The incidence of pixels, I think it is a selection, from light to dark, the frequency of them. And so then we can say if we want to just start modifying dark pixels and turning them light, so we're going to turn all the pixels that are the darkest and turn them lighter, you can see that the dark areas become gray. And to the point where we've actually crossed over, and now you've created an inverted image. So you've made a negative of like half the image. Same with the light. If we want to turn those teeth black, we can do it. Now, what's more interesting is doing a contrast adjustment, right? And then you can find multiple points. So if I want to brighten those teeth up, you know, make it lively, not hit, you know, not too lively, you can play with that there. Then we can get into different color channels. So, you know, with like skin tones, we'll say okay there. So say somebody is, we'll just do like a free select. right? We'd go into colors, and you could do hue and saturation. These are like bring up just how much intensity of color there is and so on. These are pretty simple. But curves, now we go in and we say like, well, let's take down the blue a little bit, and right there in the middle. And then we're going to like up the red because we want him to look vibrant, but now he's looking a little yellow. And you can make people look rosier. And if you do the selection right, you are doing it in such a way that it's not going to be apparent, or it's not going to affect the screen. So when you compare his neck now, he looks kind of blue, and then you come up here, and if you imagine that was just his face, there might be times when that's useful. And then you can get crazy with the curve and get all sorts of effects. Just as a comparison, the more simple tool is levels, and this is the same sort of histogram showing. What was that?
It's like Photoshop.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're familiar with that, and then this is the amount of pixels, the midpoint, and then you can change where that midpoint is, change where the clipping on either side is, and then change the output levels, which I'm not quite sure how that's different than clipping. But I don't know. I just think for folks that aren't familiar with Photoshop, because those are similar tools, but that's a pretty useful thing. Another fun one is selection by color. So if we go to selection tools and color select, and we just want to select everything that's blue. So I'm just hitting it without checking anything here. But then we can start messing with the threshold. So all right, I want to be more liberal about what I select that's similar. No, now you need to be a little less. But this can be a good way to get a baseline of a shape, particularly when that shape is unique. And then you can start applying the free lasso or other, so I'm like, all right, that's good, but I want to add this to it. So I've added that selection. So you can keep adding and subtracting selections until you get exactly what you want. And I found that useful. And obviously, when you're drawing, not obviously, this confused me when I first used it. You're only drawing in where you've selected. So you could see I'm drawing, nothing's happening out here. And I've seen new people start this and being confused. But then you come into where your selection is and you're drawing again. So a newbie mistake is to have selection none, and or have a selection that is like in the top corner, and then you're trying to draw on the thing and nothing's happening. Those are just some thoughts I have. And then I guess we can like answer some questions. I also think it's super fun to play with these different tools on here, these artistic tools. So for example, there's like GIMP Impressionist, and this will allow you to pick cubism, right? And then we can go in and say what kind of paper, orientation, size, color, all these sort of factors, and it will create an impression of that. Oh, it did it just in the corner. So again, I have to select all. All right, now with everything selected, let's go ahead and do artistic and GIMP Impressionist.
Gimpressionist, that's cute.
Yeah, and so we'll do Cubist and then update. So this does just give a embroidery. Let's embroider. All right, let's see what that looks like. So this is its attempt to make it look like it's an embroidery. I don't know if it wins on that one, but it's something. More fun ones, cartoon. I was playing with. I liked their stained glass in here somewhere. Do you see stained glass? Glass tile, maybe? That's probably, well, nope, that is not what I was thinking.
Oh, I think it's, are you looking for Mosaic? I think you're looking for Mosaic. No?
Yeah, I'm looking for Mosaic. And then what's nice about the open source side is that there are plugins and things you can add to this.
No, it's not in there.
No, yeah, it exists somewhere.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Render noise pattern. Maze. Yeah, there's so much.
I was overwhelmed by the amount of there's a ton of filters.
Yeah, because everybody brings what they want to the table.
And then they all get included in the program.
And they all get included. Yeah. All right. So I think that gives. Oh, look at some of the points that I wanted to cover. There's lots of other tools here. There's crop and others. But why don't we see what other folks are thinking or questions they have? So what do you guys think? What's your impression?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you take a color image and normally it has a full spectrum of colors in it, we'll say, and then have it process it so it expresses that same image in just 5 pigments of your choice, 5 colors of your choice, and it recalculates the whole image and puts it out just in those, say, 4 or 5 inks.
Yeah,
which
so
then become screens if you wanted a screen print onto a t-shirt.
Yeah, I think there's several ways to do this. Michael, did you want to jump in? Because I know you can do it. How exactly you do it? I think it might be a palette map.
I'm trying to think of the name of the word they call it in Photoshop. It'll pop in. Hang on, I'll remember it sooner or later.
In Illustrator, you can do that with image trace.
Mm-hmm. Inkscape, you can do the same thing. It's really easy to do in Inkscape. And that's where I would probably do that specific function. But
instead of doing it in a raster program.
Mm-hmm. But you could also do it in here. So you can, in addition to desaturating and doing all of those sorts of things, there's messing with the palette in order to change what colors there are. I used it mostly back in the day for optimizing images so that they were smaller, back when you had to like optimize images for the web, and you would reduce colors in order to be able to upload it. That would be where we would do it. Assign color profile, color management. Select a color profile. What kind? So there's all these color tools. This is a good case of go to YouTube to figure out how to do it best, or just take it over into Inkscape. So I'm going to go ahead and say it will do that. I'm going to say I don't know how to do it without looking it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the word that Photoshop uses to activate that function. Can't think of it right now.
Are you talking about color halftone? You talking about the halftone separations?
Well, when you take a color image, like somebody's great artwork, doesn't have to be a live image. It could just be a photograph of art, and you know that you're going to screen print using, say, 4 different pigments, and those pigments are going to have to be placed on what you get is stochastic screening, which allows you to print them all. And then, some like the red will have solid parts of red, and then it'll all have images that are tints of red, but all the red information is on one print or one screen.
Right.
And then you're able, and then you can print them all on top of each other. It's a great way for taking a colored image and turning it into something that you can screen print. darn it, I can't remember the name.
Yeah. So what I think, thinking about this now, I just went in, I just reduced the colors to 4 by going up to image and then mode and then indexing it. And then it's just selecting the most common average ones and making a best guess. But really what I should do if I knew it was 4 would be to go and use a selection tool, maybe starting with the color selection tool, and make my selections and then paint that in to a single color, right? And then work through it manually that way. And that way I have more control about what gets included and excluded. And that way I could, for example, in the image you're seeing here, the background is the same colors as face. But the shirt got 2 colors. So I might want to make sure that that's not quite how it happens. But I think I would do it manually by using the color selection tool and then making layers and then decreasing the color options so that, to catch any things I missed. That's one method.
Well, the nice thing about it in Photoshop was you just select the whole, let's say it's a painting, and what you want to do is just see the painting expressed in 4 pigments. You define what those pigments are. You can define.
Yeah. So, Rich, are you watching my screen?
Yeah, I'm watching.
Okay, so I went up to mode, indexed, and then
that's the word. Photoshop calls it indexing. Indexing, exactly.
And then so I can create different saved palettes, or I can just tell it this is like the auto generate, and so it's like take it down to 4, and when I say go, it goes. But to give it a better starting point, I would manually manipulate it first.
Yeah, like if you think of Miguel Mendoza's picture that he did for me of the whole band and all the skeletons dancing and playing music and everything, there's like a gazillion colors in there. Yeah, if you wanted to screen print that, it would be really, it's just better to convert it into 4 different pigments and then have them stochastically screen so that they blend. And then you get a whole range of colors in between the
I see. Yes. So that is something that'd be more like it did. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it's called. In Photoshop, it was called indexing. You would index it. And all you do is select what you want to index and then identify the pigments you want to use and then get out of its way. Oh, you would also tell it what type of screening to use. And for the screen printers, they didn't want halftones. They want what's called stochastic. They were just random dots.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I was calling dithering. It may not be the right term, but I do not know how to do that. I imagine there's a way to do it. But yeah, that's something different than just solid colors. You're right. Michael, are you familiar with that?
I've never done it that way. So I've always done the method where you turn it into a bitmap and then you apply the halftone pattern to that particular layer. I haven't done the indexed color, so but Photoshop.
Yeah, like I said, when you do it in Photoshop, you tell it what pigments they could actually be Pantone colors. Tell them you're going to use these Pantones, and then you tell it what kind of screening you want. And in this case, what I saw them do all the time was go to stochastic screening, and then they might come out with 4 or 5 plates that, when printed, probably on a white T-shirt, we'll say, or maybe they have to flash a white pigment first, but it comes out really good, and it was quick and easy. It was easy for them to do it. Photoshop did all the work, actually.
Index color.
Hey guys, I have to go, but I want to say thank you so much. This was really cool to learn this new program.
Cool.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to check out too. And thanks for the presentation. I'm learning a lot by watching you guys.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm glad you are.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Rich. Thanks for,
Pleasure. All right, bye.
All right. See you later.
Yeah. Jay or Brenda, did you have any questions before we
I just really appreciate it. I mean, it's a far shot from Microsoft Paint, so I've got some digesting to do, but you know, when I get there, I'll get there, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, just play with it. You know, even just taking cracks and things out of old photos is a fun pastime. You know, manipulating it. So enjoy it, Jay.
I appreciate it.
All right. Cool.